Welcome, everyone. We are very pleased to have you here for the Talks at Google series. Our topic today is Meditation for Rewilding the Self by Nirali Shah. Nirali, we are very honored to have you here. Thank you for being with us. Just a little bit of background on Nirali. Nirali Shah is an artist, writer, social worker, and a meditation teacher. She teaches mindfulness meditation with an emphasis on mind-body awareness and self-inquiry. She has spent thousands of hours meditating in silent retreats. She's a certified mindfulness facilitator from UCLA's Mindfulness Awareness Research Center. She lives in the Bay Area and currently teaches at nonprofits, technology companies, academic institutions, and spiritual communities such as Spirit Rock and Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City. In the past, she has served in one of the largest slum communities of Asia for more than 4 years, and she's the founder of Shwas, a nonprofit platform that has helped streamline thousands of hours of volunteer efforts to work on meaningful social change projects. Assuming that a lot of you are already familiar with meditation, and many of you have learned basic mindfulness meditation practices, the talk today will touch into some advanced aspects of this practice. Just like me, I'm sure you two are very curious to know what rewilding means and what it has to do with meditation. So please join me in welcoming Nirali Shah. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. It is such a delight to be together, building community in this way. I want to especially thank Sonali for all her efforts and her care in making this event so beautiful and smooth for all of us. And I want to thank Google for creating this space to have conversations such as these in a very corporate setting, and really appreciate that this kind of work is coming more and more into our mainstream lives. Also want to have a round of applause for Google, lots of Google employees who have been very active in the protests that are going on and are showing up at airports and at large protests. And yeah, I want to really cheer that. So I want to talk today about rewilding, about emotions. And in order to do that, I want to take you back in time, into deep time, about 15 years ago, in the life of Nirali, when she was driving a white Mazda on the freeway of Los Angeles, going to work, driving an hour each way, going to work to Malibu. I was working in advertising and design at that point, and kind of following the roadmap, following the checklist, the blueprint of what it means to have a good life. You know, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to get a good degree. I'm supposed to get a good job, make some good money. I'm supposed to have a boyfriend or a partner or a girlfriend, something. And I'm supposed to, I'm supposed to sort of buy a house, get a mortgage, go for some exotic vacations, get a car. And there was this, somewhere I think I was made to believe that that very next achievement or acquisition is what would fulfill me. And that would give meaning to my life, you know, the next car or the next job opportunity or the next title or award. And that was perfectly fine. And I felt like I was living a good life, you know. It was, I was kind of doing pretty well in that sense. But internally, like, I vividly remember something feeling like really out of balance, like off kilter. And I started wondering, what was really going on for me. And it was very hard to even ask those kind of questions, because the minute I start asking those kind of questions, that sort of starts creating some disruption in my flow of life. And so here I am, trying to ask those questions, and at the same time distracting myself in a lot of work and things to do and a busy schedule. And now that when I look back at that Nirali, I can see that she was struggling. She was really struggling. There was this kind of nervous energy that she was trying to hide. There was this low-level kind of a radio frequency of anxiety or static pretty much all the time. There was this sense of not feeling completely safe and at ease in my own skin, in my own body. And that was painful. There's this quote by the writer Anne Lamott. She says, "My mind is like a bad neighborhood, and I try not to go there alone." And that's kind of what was going on there for me. And there was also this sense of being lost and unsure, like this sense of walking on eggshells and not being fully sure of what am I doing with my life, or is there even a meaning or a purpose? And at some point, I found meditation, and I started practicing. And in the practice of meditation, the promise was, at least as I assumed it, is that it would reduce stress, it would reduce my anxiety, it would make me feel more in control of what's going on. And I was like reading a lot of hundreds of hours of scriptures, like Buddhist scriptures, or I was reading Hindu scriptures, or I would look into Sufism or Tao or J. Krishnamurti, and I did a lot of retreats. So now, instead of frequenting nightclubs, I was frequenting a lot of meditation centers, and I did dozens and dozens of retreats. And a lot of these retreats, when I started off, was in the S.N. Goenka tradition, which a lot of you, I think a few of you here have done those, which is these 10-day retreats where you're sitting for at least 10 hours in cross-legged, in silence, and you are, your last meal is at 11 in the morning, and you're silent throughout the entire time. And so I did a lot of those. And I thought that as I do that, I would feel less of an intensity of emotions. What happened was kind of the opposite. The more I meditated, I started feeling more. More stuff came up, and there was more like emotions coming up, strong emotions. And I was like, oh my God, I'm doing something really wrong here. Maybe I'm not getting this practice right. And then, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep meditating. I'm going to sit like a warrior. I'm going to let these emotions pass through me. And I'm going to become like, the Buddha. The Buddha is like someone who's unshakable, unmovable, no matter what emotions, whatever happens. He's like blissed out in these exalted mental states. And I think like I had some misunderstanding because I don't know if I was really thinking of a Buddha or a piece of furniture, because even a piece of furniture is kind of unmovable around emotions. So, but that was like my sense that, I'm gonna keep, and maybe I need to work hard. Maybe I'm not performing enough. And so maybe I need to meditate more harder. And so I did that. And what happened in this journey of the last 10 or 15 years is that what has happened has kind of surprised me. And what I want to do today is share some of the insights, some of these turnings that have come in my life and how they have shaped me. And also, I think they have also clarified something very beautiful and important for me. And these are things that I have not heard enough around meditation in our popular meditation circles. And so it feels important to share these, because for me, these have been ways in which I show up to my practice, and why this practice feels more immediate and honest in my own experience. So I want to share my first learning or insight with you, and that is around emotions. I thought that the more I meditate, I will get rid of emotions, of strong emotions. But what has happened is that I feel ever more connected to my emotional world. I remember going to a lot of retreats back in India as well as here. One of these retreats was at this ashram where you go into a room and they actually lock you from the outside. There's a door. There's a room with an attached bathroom. And I was meditating there for about 8 days. And there's a small window, and they sort of push in food through that window a couple times a day. And it was one of the most beautiful and important retreats of my life, where there is no windows, there isn't even a fan. Like, it's like really bare, and all you can do is sit and go inside. And I remember all these strong emotions of fear coming up there. And it's so fascinating to me because there was no external situations around fear. And I could see how these emotions are deep already sitting in my body. It's not like they are new. They have always been there. This fear has always been there. There was another retreat where I experienced strong anger. This was a 1-month meditation retreat where I was, where you're supposed to be in silence and sitting. And in that 1-month retreat, this strong emotion of anger around the 12th or 13th day, showing up. And what was amazing was that instead of seeing anger as a problem, that this is not the state of a Buddha, of a good meditator, I think for me what was important was to allow all of that energy of anger without feeling embroiled in it. And there was this capacity because the mindfulness, the sati, was so strong that one could allow these strong emotions to show up without feeling destabilized or overwhelmed. And what happens when you really allow these emotions is you start seeing that actually these emotions are like messengers. When I sat with that anger for 3 or 4 days, strong anger, I could see that that anger had a very visceral charge in my body. And when you continue experiencing it, I could see that, so there was a story and all of that, but somehow at some point the story was not that important and the mind was not sort of spinning in the story, but somehow there was more awareness in the body. And when that anger was arising, I could feel the charge, the energy of the anger. And what's amazing is I could see that beneath anger is a passion for justice. Anger has a different quality than hate. It's not cold. It's kind of hot, And at another retreat, I could see comparing mind showing up. And when you have comparing mind, and when you can really allow that instead of feeling guilty or bad about yourself, really receive that as a gift, as a message, you start seeing, for me, I could see, wow, beneath this comparing mind, there's a whole bunch of self-loathing, self-hate. And how does that work? So you start becoming more and more curious. You investigate with a lot of kindness. So you are, instead of trying to get rid of emotions, I think in this practice, what I was learning was that how can I meet these emotions with an even greater intimacy and compassion? And when we do that, there is this capacity to bring all parts of ourselves to the practice. And to me, that's very powerful. The other piece that's also something I keep noticing is that by going to more and more meditation retreats, and also this piece around spending time in nature, is that at some point my mind starts relaxing. So instead of feeling this headiness around constantly spinning thoughts, it almost feels like these kind of brain the strings in my brain are not being stretched or pulled that hard, and there's a kind of soothing relaxation that starts happening, and then I can feel like more and more energy is moving down into the heart area, and my capacity to feel is heightened. And that's really such an amazing gift when you're not spinning in thoughts or stories, and your capacity to feel emotions increases. And your sense of, you get a much deeper access to your emotional world. And sometimes in that process, strong emotions show up, like shame, like fear. And in that process, the other thing that I have seen is how feelings are marginalized in our communities. So it's because the more and more I meditate, I can see that this is not a solo journey. This is also as much a relational journey. But the way we have built our world, feelings and emotions, sensory experiences, intuition, all of this is greatly marginalized and almost even irrelevant for a lot of people. And so I feel like, how do we create sort of spaces where this is actually at the center? Because when we study like ancient or indigenous communities, for a lot of these communities, feelings, intuition, all of these qualities were genuinely at the center of their cultures. There's a quote that I really like by Joanna Macy. She says, "The refusal to feel takes a heavy toll. Not only is there an impoverishment of our emotional and sensory life, flowers are dimmer, less fragrant, our loves less ecstatic, but this psychic numbing also impedes our capacity to process and respond to information. The energy expended in pushing down despair is diverted from more creative uses, depleting the resilience and imagination needed for fresh visions and strategies." The great Thai master Ajahn Chah, he says that your practice has not even started if you haven't cried yet. And I could see, like, in these retreats, crying happened quite a bit, because and sometimes it happened from a lot of space of gratitude and appreciation, and sometimes just heartbreaking, just really being in the midst of the ocean of suffering and knowing that that also is real. And I could also appreciate the sacredness of tears and how cleansing they are. But in our everyday world, if I do that at Google, I mean, that would be pretty much stigmatized. So I wonder, like, how can we also create spaces where we can bring more spaciousness for that too? So that was my first insight around emotions. The second learning that I wanted to share was around control. Control versus chaos. So as I practiced more, one thing that showed up for me, that instead of gaining greater control or predictability in my life, this practice moved me closer to the center of chaos and uncertainty. And it taught me how to be with it. And that was very radical, because I think we often feel like, oh, if I meditate more, things would be like more stable. But that's not really what happens. But what does happen is our capacity to be with that instability and that uncertainty greatly increases. And so we enjoy it. We can receive that. We don't always enjoy it, but we can receive that. As I started moving more and more in the spiritual path, a lot of concepts started dropping away. It started scattering like dust particles, a lot of ideas that I had built. And I could see all the different ways in which I had built my life that was not authentic, that was not really coming from this deeper longing inside me. And I could see the violence that we do to ourselves when we are too afraid to be who we really are. There's this quote by Anais Nin, and she says, "The day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." I'll repeat that. The day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. After about 6 months into this and these practices, I went to India, and a few months after that, I moved to India, and I was there for 6 or 7 years. And out of that time, for about 4.5 years, I worked with 4 different nonprofits, and one of them was working in a slum community. John was there, and Samir was there. There are actually a few friends here who worked with me in those communities. And I was, at one end, I was in LA on my track, the blueprint, the map. And here I was in the midst of this uncertainty, working in this community, and one of the projects I was doing was working with these women who did rag picking for a living. And a lot of my days would be going with this large gunny bag on my shoulders and walking the streets for about few kilometers every day and picking up paper and plastic and putting my hands in perhaps the worst garbage sometimes that I could imagine, because I was learning about the lives of these women, and I was working on livelihood, health and nutrition, and microfinancing for them. And so it was really important to experience their life and learn from them. And a lot of times my work, I would be taking these women to the hospital for checkups. And somehow, like, when I look back, this was like completely not making sense even to me. Like, what is it that I'm really doing? It was very confusing, because even the work in the nonprofit was so random and chaotic. Even the organization that I started, like, everything was just kind of happening. One of the projects that I had, I used to do, was every few weeks I would cook a meal for about 120 people. And I would pack these meals in these leaf containers. And I would invite my friends, and we would go to the streets, and we would like offer these meals to people who were homeless. And we would hang out with them, we would sit with them, we would connect with them. And sometimes I would find people who were in extreme physical conditions. This one time, there was this man who I met at the railway station, and he was he had been on the floor, lying there, like for maybe 4 or 5 days, and he was covered in his own in urine and dirt. There were all these flies all over him, and it didn't feel right to just leave a meal and go away. And so I picked him up, and we took him to a hospital. And I was trying to take care of him for about 8 days. And unfortunately, he passed away. He had a very extreme form of tuberculosis. But all I knew in that moment was that it was important for me to hold his life as sacred. And that was not logical. That was not, it was not a part of my plan. It wasn't, and I could not control his death. But somehow, like, being a part of those experiences has deeply shaped my meditation practice. I cannot imagine how I could be doing this practice without going through those experiences and realizing that my own well-being is deeply tied to the well-being of others. There's this poem by Kabir, who's a Sufi saint, and he says that I have locked my house and I have burnt it down and I have walked to the village square and I'm waiting for you. If you too have the guts to burn your house, come with me. And that's a very provocative poem. He says that scorch the house to make a house arise, yogi. Protect it and it's gone. I saw a miraculous sight, yogi, a dead man eating up time. The promise of a new house built on the ashes of the old one is a taste of your authentic self. The promise of a new house built on the ashes of the old one is a taste of your authentic self. And one of my teachers said that in one lifetime, you probably have to burn down your house like at least half a dozen times. and I think it's metaphorical, of course. But what he's saying is that there's something around having the courage to look into all these concepts and ideas that we have built that are not serving us in a deeper way. And how can we live more immediately, more honestly with our immediate experience? There's this another poem, it's a Japanese poem, and they say the sky now cracks and falls, the earth cleaves open. In the heart of the fire lies a hidden spring. And this word fire is really important when we talk about rewilding the self, because in the heart of the fire lies a hidden spring. This practice is not mechanical. It's not about going through the motions of the breath or the body. This practice is really about this deep curiosity, investigation. And it's about meeting that fire inside you and even getting excited by that fire, getting nourished by that fire. My last learning is that instead of becoming calm, docile, and well-behaved, the practice of meditation made me more expanded, awakening a fierce love, and to some extent even threatening the status quo. The Buddha was a revolutionary. His path of awakening was one of rebellion, a subversive path. Subversive against greed, against hatred, against delusion. He thought that we have to travel against the norms of society, against our own self-centered tendencies. He called it, in his own language, he called this the path of Patisotagami, which literally means going against the stream. Going against the stream. And in that sense, meditation is an act of resistance. It is an act of uprooting ourselves in some ways from the collective culture. Because when we are too embroiled in the collective culture and not investigating, we are taking on a lot of ideas, assumptions, pressures of what we ought to be doing. And I think in that sense, it's really helpful to go to these retreats, because then you can have that spaciousness to look at life at your own terms, a very direct experience. When I started meditating over the years, for me, I think my understanding of the different systems of oppressions is becoming more and more clearer. I'm feeling more awake to all the different ways in which oppression works internally and externally. Mindfulness is often thought as a means to stress reduction, which is very great and helpful and important. And I teach that too. But I think for me, it's also very important to ask, what is causing us stress? A lot of what's happening in our world right now, like I would actually be surprised if people are not stressed and anxious. I mean, that would be unimaginable if the environmental destruction, the political oppression, the racism, a lot of things are going on. And if we are not feeling anxious, that would be really surprising. And as a meditation teacher, if I am prescribing behaviors for calming and conformity without bringing this piece of social justice, then I feel in some sense I'm encouraging a spiritual bypass. So also, because I wonder, like, what is then the difference between me and an inexperienced psychiatrist who's not doing a good job? What's the difference between the psychiatrist who's simply pushing more and more drugs and more palliatives on his client, but not really asking or questioning the roots of what is making that client go through a difficult time? What is causing psychosis? What is causing trauma? And so as a result, I think it's really important for us to look into all the different ways oppression is taking place in our societies. If the Buddha was alive today, he would definitely be given a lot of medication and put into a correction facility. Because also what we need to think about is also what is normalcy. And what is normalcy in a world which we are living today, which is essentially an industrial growth capitalist society that we are living in. And so what is normalcy? No, I mean, because a lot of things that we see as normal are actually quite extreme. The ways in which competition works, the ways in which politics works, it's really extreme. And so I feel it's really important to bring this piece of different oppressions into our conversation and really ask ourselves, like, what am I doing other than meditation? What am I really doing in the world? And doing for myself and others, where I might be a part of this system of oppression. And so in that sense, meditation is not a consumptive act. I feel that instead of calming down and almost numbing down, this practice of meditation has made me more fiercely engaged. Instead of moving into a retreat space, it is moving me more and more into a collective space. And I feel that if more and more people are meditating this way, I think a lot of these systems of hierarchy and oppression would disrupt and dismantle in no time. Because meditation is not an act of domestication. It is not exaggerated politeness or obedience. Meditation is a subversive act. It is a revolutionary act. So I want to end with sharing with you a few sort of ways that guide my life at this point after these 15 years. I feel each one of us is a custodian of this wild and fierce love for all of this existence. And we are fluid, space-time beings, interwoven through the strands of our breath, through the juices of our joys and tears, and our shared longing to care for and heal our beloved earth. Though we are conditioned to act competitively, separate, but at the same time, if we can pierce through that thin membrane of delusion, we expand into our creative force, into the vast firmaments of wisdom, into the stream of great compassion within us. This practice has brought me more and more connected to the earth. I feel that instead of transcending, I feel more embodied in the here and now than I was before. And also, I feel more connected to the very core of our powerful earth, you know. And I also feel like a lot of what this practice teaches me is that I am nature. And as I meditate, I'm returning to nature what already belongs to nature, and that I have misappropriated as I. And so this deeper interconnectedness, interwovenness with the earth is becoming more and more real in my life. I also have started noticing all the different ways in which this very wild, primal energy inside us was pushed down. I mean, I feel I was very domesticated, very shut down. And this primal force inside me was abandoned and ignored and pushed away in some corner of my psyche. And this practice of meditation is bringing that energy alive. And that energy is very deeply connected to the energy of the earth. So meditation does not have to be an anesthetic act. It is an aesthetic act. And I think I want to leave you at the end of this talk with one question. It's a line from the poet Mary Oliver's poems. A lot of what I read today, a lot of poems are coming from some beautiful women writers and teachers. And when I was writing this, I realized that I'm somehow tapping into the lineage of these beautiful women through history. So the line is, tell me what you plan to do with your one wild and precious life. Thank you so much. Appreciate you listening. We have a few minutes, so I'm happy if anyone has any questions.
So you said that you were following this plan when you were in LA, and even though there was this radio frequency constant, you would push that back. What was it that motivated you? Was it just a constant thing and you decided that I need to do something, or was it something that really shook you up and that you decided to take up meditation?
From what I remember, it was happening over time. So it wasn't like one snap, like one day when I realized that, okay, I'm going to change things. But one thing that I do realize is that at some level inside me, I was asking this question around, is there any meaning? Or is there anything sacred about life? Or is it just this mundane way of living and getting things done and getting a paycheck? And, it's just, is it all supposed to be like kind of flat like that? And I feel that, I personally feel that there is nothing more sad than seeing life as meaningless or not sacred. That would be a huge loss, and that didn't feel like a way I wanted to live. And so I wanted to discover if there is something. Yeah.
I think that makes the way you describe it, I think I'm probably living a really sad life, because there are times when I ask these questions, and there's also, I think, at least I feel it, there's a pull that pulls you back. There is some excitement about the mundane things that we are doing, but then while you're doing them, you're enjoying them. But when you come back, you realize, oh, what was the point of it all? Mm-hmm. And so I was curious. So because for me, it's a constant back and forth. I enjoy probably, maybe I'm miserable both places, and maybe I'm enjoying both the places. So I was curious that gradually you were able to go further into meditation and actually explore more.
Yeah, and even the mundane things, actually, I can feel over the years like they're like becoming more radiant. They're like shining with like this simple act of making coffee. It feels like there's something radiant and sacred about that. And this act of just watering the plants. And so there is some kind of a deeper connection or emotional connection to mundane things.
So meditation is, all these things you've talked about are very like positive things, but I've heard of a lot of stories about people who go to these retreats, and myself included, who have a really hard time with it. And you don't often hear about this. And so when it happened to me, I was very surprised and was like, what did I do wrong? Why am I having a hard time? And I'm wondering, have you ever experienced something like that?
Oh, yeah, I can deeply resonate with some of what you're saying. I don't know which retreat you went to, but I can definitely tell you that it is a very, very skillful process. It's a very skillful practice. And over time, I have seen that there are times when I have driven myself a bit too hard, and it has taken me some time to like recover and heal that. So absolutely, like it's not, I think it really helps to have a very skilled teacher, a very experienced teacher who you can check in with very like deeply and who can understand you very quickly also because there isn't sometimes a lot of time at these retreats to talk. But for me, like it's also been, if I could share one thing, that as I meditated, I started experiencing some very beautiful states of great beauty, I mean, great expansion, a great sense of connectedness, of feeling, like really connected to something much vaster. And a lot of times I would actually not tell my teachers all this because sometimes some teachers, like, they are not skilled and they don't have they can reflect it back at you in a way which might like not support you at that time. So it's very important to go slow. And the last thing also I can tell you is that working with emotions it's not an easy practice. And anytime you meditate, you are going to face strong emotions. And it's very important to learn how you work with emotions, because if you go too much, it can destabilize you. And so there's a whole somatic piece around this. And you don't want to get overwhelmed, because if you do, your nervous system would go into a fight, flight, or freeze response. And that can be hard. So for me, a lot of my practice is like really practicing delight. It's not all suffering and hard work. A lot of this meditation practice is learning to take in great, great delight. So much of the way we function, we sometimes when very difficult or painful experiences come in, our system is not ready to take it and we put it under the carpet. And at the same time, when very, very pleasurable experiences come, we do the same thing. We put great pleasure under the carpet, because the mind, the sort of the ego wants to stay in this lukewarm, neutral territory, and it doesn't want to. It doesn't have a capacity to take in, and so over time, like you start building a greater capacity to work with these emotions. Yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. When you do overdo it, or how do you like balance it back? What's the best way to balance yourself?
So I can give you an example. I was at a retreat and some deep trauma sort of stuff came up for me from like 15 years ago or something, like really old stuff. And I was like, it was hard. And what I did is I stopped meditating. I got up, I went to my room, I took a nice shower, I wore some nice clothes, I went for a beautiful walk, I hung out with the deer, I looked at the flowers, I enjoyed a nice cup of tea, really, really relaxing myself. And then after a few hours, I went back on the cushion and I had a lot more capacity to be with that. And then again, like I would see, okay, this is getting too intense for me. So now I'm gonna like take in some more delight because I don't want to stretch my nervous system.
My question is around meditation as a personal practice versus the rest of my life being connected to other people like family and friends. So how do you reconcile this rewiring that's happening and you're redefining your sense of self and your priorities and having all these paradigm shifts with those that are close to you who are not on this journey with you, if you're doing it as a personal thing? Like, have you had experiences where you had to reconcile with that in certain ways, or how do you bring your loved ones along with you on the journey or whatever, you know?
I can just say to my own experience is that at some point it was not easy. At some point, at the time, my parents could not understand what I'm doing with my life, and I feel like I had to just go through that, at least in my case, because I knew I had a sense of what I was doing. It was not completely clear at the time, but there was still a deep calling. And I knew that I had to be true to that. And yeah, it was kind of rocky at that time. And now, all these years later, they have deep respect and love and gratitude for me and for the path I have chosen, and they're incredibly supportive. So I wish I could have taken them with me at that time, but that was not happening, and I saw that also as a part of my practice, that how this is kind of shaping my truth or my faith in this practice.
Hello, you mentioned my meditation as a revolution. Do you think there is a way to get people to be part of the revolution? Or do you feel like we should try to get people?
We should. How do you mean that?
So should we try to get people to be part of the revolution, or should we let them be? Like, if they want to be part of the revolution, should we try to get them to? So it's like, should you convince people to meditate? Do you like?
It's actually a very meaningful question, what you're asking. I can see the subtlety in what you're asking. Because obviously you're not saying that we should try to force people to meditate. I know you're not asking that. So there's a nuance to your question. I feel that there are two ways in which meditation seems to be happening. One is that it is my stress, my problems, my anxiety, my life, and I need to get rid of all this so that I can live a better life, and I could be, maybe even there's subconsciously there are ideas of I could be higher or superior or better than others in the world. And that could be one frame of how people are approaching meditation. And I think for me, as a teacher, it's important to offer the second frame of how this practice works, because I genuinely feel that this practice cannot go too far if it's just about if it's consumptive in nature. Because I feel that as we practice more, these sort of layers or membranes of separation, they start thinning out. And we start experiencing this powerful shared humanity with each other. And for me, in that sense, this practice is deeply relational. I offer retreats which are all about relational mindfulness. And those are ways in which we start becoming very, very supportive to each other. So I think, to offer this other frame is very important and meaningful. And then, of course, it's their choice. Yeah.
so most of the tech world in Silicon Valley is going like AI, you know, and what you're talking about is going, more machine-like, and there'll be machine inside of me, outside of me, and maybe I'll be a machine. I don't know. A lot of stuff going on like that, and that's the quote-unquote future that people are really proud of. But like how, and you talked about going back to the wild and nature and back to the earth, like how do you reconcile those two things? Because most of our society is getting more and more techno enabled.
I cannot reconcile the two personally, and I say that standing here at Google. I personally feel, at least that's my sense, is that over time, as we are becoming more AI and more sort of machine-oriented, I feel that there will be communities and people who will make a choice. And there will be some who would move more towards the earth and some who would move more towards machines. I don't think machines are bad. I don't think technology is bad. It can be very helpful. I use a lot of technology, and there is a lot to be said around appropriate technology. But I feel that technology which can bring a lot of feeling and emotion is very important. So to answer your question, I cannot fully reconcile the two, because I think the aspect around feeling, energy, emotion is very real to my practice.
I was wondering, for someone starting out in meditation practice, how you would recommend starting if you weren't to just drop your career in life and take off to an ashram.
Yeah, I don't think it's important to drop your. I think it's completely, perfectly possible and great to. Maybe that's authentic to your experience right now, is to have a stable job, have a stable family, and that stability can be very helpful to the practice too. So it's very personal. How to start? There are a few ways. There's Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City. Gil Fronsdale is a wonderful teacher. They have regular sits. Monday nights is a good place to start, where there would be a sit and a Dharma talk. And there is also, I think there is SIY here, Search Inside Yourself at Google. And they also offer the sort of the introduction to mindfulness meditation practice. And then, if you feel so inclined, there are these 10-day meditation retreats by S.N. Goenka. I personally recommend Spirit Rock as well, which is in Marin, and they have a lot of retreats. So I would check out some of those websites. I want to really thank you for your time and for being here. And it's really very special to be able to sit together in this context and share our lives with each other. So thank you so much for listening to me. Take care.
Thank you, Nirali, for your talk, and thank you, everyone, for your time and your beautiful questions. If you feel stuck in your meditation practice, you can shoot an email to Nirali. You can contact her at www.niralis.com. It's NIRALIS.com, and you can find her information and contact information there. Okay, thank you.